to our midterm review video. I'm going to go over the things that we discussed in class that came up during the Kahoot that you sought clarification on. So we'll start with the period 1 content. That's starting with 1450 and going to 1648. So first there was the first question that said, whoever reigns, his religion. So this comes from the Peace of Augsburg, which ended the 30 Years' War. And what this meant was that in the Holy Roman Empire, each prince in each different province could choose the religion. And the Peace of Augsburg also outlawed Calvinism. You asked who Boccaccio was. He was from the Renaissance. He was an Italian poet who wrote the Decameron, which was a series of short stories that portrayed a worldly society. He also supported Petrarch's ideas, and what's important is that he lived during the Black Plague, and so that influenced his writing. So we asked about Zwinglism. So to back up, the 16th century Switzerland was the Swiss Confederation, which was an association of 13 self-governing states that were called cantons. So theoretically part of the Holy Roman Empire, they became virtually independent in 1499. There were 6 forest cantons that were democratic republics, and the 7 urban cantons, which included Zurich, Bern, and Basel, they were and for the most part governed by city councils controlled by narrow oligarchies of wealthy citizens. So Ulrich Zwingli, he was from the Swiss forest cantons, and he became a Christian humanist and was a priest in 1506, and he accepted a parish post in rural Switzerland until his appointment as a cathedral priest in the Great Minster of Zurich in 1518. So through his preaching there, he began the Reformation in Switzerland. His preaching of the gospel caused a lot of unrest that in 1523 the city council held a public disputation or debate in the town hall. So this became a standard method of spreading the Reformation to many cities. It gave an advantage to reformers since they had the power of their new ideas and Catholics were not used to defending their teachings. So Zwingli's party won this debate and the council declared that, quote, Mayor Council and Great Council of Zurich, in order to do away with disturbance and discord, have upon due deliberation and consultation decided and resolved that Master Zwingli should continue as heretofore to proclaim the gospel and the pure sacred scripture. So over the next 2 years, the city council, influenced by Zwingli, prompted evangelical reforms in Zurich. Zwingli looked to the state to supervise the church because he thought that a church without a magistrate was incomplete. So the city council abolished relics and images, removed all paintings and decorations from the churches, and replaced them with whitewashed walls. He also wanted to build a league of evangelical cities by seeking an agreement with Luther and the German reformers. An alliance between them seemed possible since the Reformation had spread to the southern German states, especially Strasbourg. So, in Strasbourg, Martin Bucer, he instituted a moderate reform movement that contained characteristics of both Luther's movement and Zwingli's movement. The German and the Swiss reformers, they realized this need for unity to defend against imperial and conservative opposition. So you also asked about who Baldassare Castellan was. So he kind of started this ideals that became to be expected of nobles and aristocrats. He wrote the Book of Courtiers in 1528. And this was a handbook for European aristocrats. And in this book, he stated that there are 3 basic attributes to the aristocrat. So he said that nobles should possess fundamental native endowments such as impeccable character, grace, talents, and noble birth. The perfect courtier must also cultivate certain achievements. Primarily, he should participate in military and bodily exercises because the principal profession of a courtier was bearing arms. But unlike the medieval knight, who had been required only to have military skill, The Renaissance courtier was also expected to have a classical education and to adorn his life with the arts by playing a musical instrument, drawing, and painting. So basically, Castellium, he created this Renaissance ideal of the well-developed personality, which became a social ideal of the aristocracy. Lastly, the aristocrat was expected to follow a certain standard of conduct. Nobles were to make a good impression. While remaining modest, they should not hide their accomplishments, but show them with grace. Jan Hus, we came upon him in the Kahoot as well. He was a chancellor of a university, I should say of, not or, sorry about that, in Prague, and he called for reform and urged for the elimination of worldliness and corruption of the clergy. This is between 1374 and 1415, so we're talking about the Renaissance here. So he urged for the elimination of worldliness and corruption of the clergy and attacked the excessive power of the papacy within the Catholic Church. His objections fell on receptive ears, for the Catholic Church was one of the largest landowners in Bohemia, was already widely criticized. So many clergymen were German, and the native Czechs' strong resentment of the Germans who dominated Bohemia also contributed to Huss's movement. So the Council of Constance attempted to deal with the growing problem of heresy by summoning John Huss to the council. So that gives you a summary of him. All right, Christian humanists are two Christian humanists that we need to know are Erasmus and Thomas More. And so the Northern Renaissance is also called the Christian Renaissance, and their goal was to reform Christianity. And so, like the Italian Renaissance, they cultivated knowledge of the classics and this bond that united all humanists into a kind of international fellowship. So they returned to the writings of antiquity. Northern humanists focused on the sources of early Christianity, the Holy Scriptures, and the writings of such church fathers like Augustine. And in these writings, they discovered a simple religion that they came to feel had been distorted by the complicated theological arguments of the Middle Ages. So the most important characteristic of Christian humanists was its reform program. Because they were convinced of the ability of human beings to reason and improve themselves, the Northern humanists felt that through education in the sources of classical and especially Christian antiquity, they could instill a true inner piety or an inward religious feeling that would bring about a reform of the church and society. So Christian humanists supported schools, brought out new editions of the classics, and prepared new editions of the Bible and writings of the church fathers. All right, let's move on to period 2. So we're going to start, I want to give you some nicknames that you may see about different phases of the French Revolution. So the first phase is the fall of the old regime, which was up till 1789. Phase 2 was the first French Revolution from 89 to 92. This is known as the liberal phase. Phase 3 is the second French Revolution from 92 to 94, called the radical phase. Phase 4 is 94 to 99, called the Directory, and the final phase is the Napoleonic era. So I'm going to talk about the liberal phase, which includes these events: the Tennis Court Oath, the fall of the Bastille, the Great Fear, the abolition of feudal privileges, the Declaration of the Rights of Man, and the War on Austria and Prussia. I'm going to post on Google Classroom a chart that breaks up all of the events and all of the phases. So someone asked who revoked the Edict of Nantes. The answer is Louis XIV. And someone asked about zealotry and what it means. So it's just the fanatical ideals, whether it be religious, political, or other ideals. And then there was a question about two houses that rose to power in the Holy Roman Empire after the Peace of Westphalia. And so the answer was the Hohenzollern house and the Habsburg house. So we have, in addition to those rising to power from the Peace of Westphalia, the Dutch Netherlands and Switzerland became independent and outside of Habsburg influence. France gained Alsace and Brandenburg, which was an ascendant Protestant kingdom in the Holy Roman Empire. The Netherlands gained independence from Spain. Sweden gained control of the Baltic and France, and it also extended terms of the Peace of Augsburg to Calvinists. So that concludes the questions from today. If you have more specific questions that you need addressed, please fill out the form that is on Google Classroom.